When we're young, we have an amazing, positive outlook about how great life is going to be, but somewhere along the line, we forget to dream and end up settling. Join Up Dots features amazing people who refuse to give up and chose to go after their dreams. This is your blueprint for greatness. So here's your host, live from the back of his garden in the UK, David Ralph.
Yes, hello, good morning everybody, and welcome to another fun-packed episode of Join Up Dots. Yes, it's the motivational, inspirational, conversational show where I bring the movers and shakers across the world to your ears. Yes, it's like they're laying in bed or in the bath with you. Don't tell your special partner, but you're going to have two men together. I don't know if that's a nightmare or a fantasy for you. And one of them is going to be me, and the other one is going to be our today's guest, who basically, since starting his career, has worked tirelessly to lift the hood of the internet and find out what's going on behind the scenes. Now, since the advent of the commercial internet, he's collected, researched, reviewed and plotted thousands of websites across thousands of businesses to see what they're doing well and what they are doing badly. He now has tens of thousands of data points that have given him the ability to identify what he calls the 8 money-draining mistakes. These are the things that literally cause a website to leak serious money every day. And now he teaches companies and organizations how to fix them and how to fix them immediately. And it appears that the world is full of leaky websites that are doing a fraction of what they should be doing in regards to monetization, lead generation, or simply connecting with customers and keeping them as customers. Now, these are the things that really matter because they increase financial return on investment in the digital world by 200 to 500%. Yep, 200 to 500% or more in 12 months or less. And all of this can be done without needing technical skills. Now, he's the host of the Onward Nation podcast, CEO of Predictive ROI, and a digital marketing authority, speaker, educator, and best-selling author of 2 books, The Small Business Owner's Handbook to Search Engine Optimization and Increase Online Sales Through Viral Social Networking. So you get a steer of him. You get a steer of what this man's all about. But I throw a curveball in. What made this young man with such entrepreneurial spirit enter into the US Air Force for 4 years as a senior airman back in the day? And are all these websites fully leak-proof? This is what I want to know. Are they all fully leak-proof, or like every mechanic in the world, is he actually driving around in something falling to pieces? Well, let's find out as we bring onto the show to start joining up dots with the one and only Mr. Stephen Woessner. Good morning, Stephen. How are you, sir?
Oh my gosh, it is so good to be here with you, David, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation. Thank you for the invitation to be here.
Do you think we've excited the women and the men of the world by giving that image of the two of us, either in the bath or in bed together? Did you think that's going to really give this a viral episode?
Well, I think it's going to be certainly a powerful visual metaphor. I don't know if that's good, but I think you created a very powerful visual for sure.
Well, it's with me, Stephen. It's with me, and it's making me rock and roll after a hard day of recording. I don't know what that says about me. I really don't. But I'm here ready to do the do with a man who, I'll be honest, I don't know, you're a podcaster. Sometimes you get a guest pitched to come on the show and you kind of give them the overview and you think, oh yeah, they're fine, all right. And then within a second of talking to them, you think, I've got this person wrong. And you're fun. You like fun, don't you? You like a joke. You like enjoyment. You're not a kind of a geeky website analyzing person. You are somebody that loves their job but loves their life as well.
Yeah, I think there certainly is a blend. I think you need to be able to have fun along the way. I mean, I run a business. There are certainly serious moments to that, but I think you need to be able to laugh at yourself. I think you need to be able to have a culture that's fun. Otherwise, I mean, then why are you doing it? I mean, sure, to drive numbers and all of that kind of stuff, but I think it's more about being able to serve and create impact and really enrich lives and have great teammates around you who really care about the work that they're doing for the clients for whom they're serving. So yeah, and if you're not able to have fun along the way, like our January meetup, for all of our teammates to come together, we're spread across the country here in the US. We have full-time employees in each of the different time zones here in the US. And we're all meeting up in January. Well, where are we going to meet up? We're going to meet up in the happiest place on earth, in Disney World, and spend several days together. So combining business and fun, like, why shouldn't you do that? That's awesome.
It is, and it proves that it is a small world after all, I would imagine.
And I mean, come on, that is like one of the most iconic songs like ever, isn't it?
Well, it is, and I'm not going to do it because it will just be in people's ears for the rest of the episode, and no one will concentrate on our content. I probably went 5 years ago, and I'm still singing that bloody song every single morning when I wake up.
Yes, it does. It does kind of stick with you. And but you know what? I mean, every time we go, we have to ride that ride probably 2 or 3 times, and I actually love it. It's one of my favorites at Magic Kingdom, so it's great.
So with you, right, we know that you like to have fun. We know that you enjoy your job. And obviously we're going to be talking about your job and how you actually created it and found your thing. But do you love it? Is this your thing? Is this your legacy work? Or would you rather be an international playboy jet-setting around with supermodels and having fun? Is this your thing that wakes up every morning and you think, oh, yeah, another day on this?
Yeah, I mean, definitely not the latter. The, international playboy supermodels, that kind of stuff. That's not my thing. That's never been, a dream of mine. And so, no, that's not that. For me, what it is being able to do what it is that we do with the greater purpose of, education and, changing lives through that. And because that was really important to my grandfather, who immigrated to the U.S. from Istanbul, Turkey, when he was just 18. And, he lost his father, my great-grandfather, when my grandfather was only 8 years old, and had to drop out of the 3rd grade in order to make enough money to support his mom and his 2 younger siblings. And he did it with a smile on his face. But through that, and only having a 3rd grade education, when he came here to the U.S. 6 years later, with just only having $10 in his pocket when he got here and not being able to speak the language, 6 years later, he owned his own restaurant. Because he had saved his money, he learned something new, he was able to master the language, and he never stopped learning. So education is extremely important to me, and we support that with both our teammates and as well as through clients. That's why we teach everything that we do in full transparency. We also support that from a financial perspective as well in our communities. And so that's my legacy. It is a part of my grandfather's legacy, being able to support education, entrepreneurship, business owners in any way we possibly can. And we have fun doing that. It's just not the Playboy lifestyle.
So do you still go along with the American dream, or is the American dream dead? I've had a few people now that say, yeah, it's alive and kicking, and other people go, no, it's just gone. Did you go with the American dream?
Absolutely. I think that we are still the land of opportunity. Do we have, decisive or divisiveness is what I meant to say. Divisiveness is going on right now. Absolutely. Do I wish that we could have, better conversation around, those points and so forth? Absolutely. So there are many things that are going on in our country right now that I'm not, pleased with and would like to see, done differently. But this country does still remain the land of opportunity. This country does still remain, if somebody has the grit, the tenacity, the perseverance, the drive to change their life in a meaningful way, there's an abundance of opportunity to do that here in the United States. And we certainly have many things to make better. But I think the American dream is alive and well.
But isn't there sort of, not hanging on this subject forever and a day, but isn't the American dream now available to everyone through the internet? It doesn't matter where you live across the world. You've got the ability to connect with customers you've never been able to get your profile out there, and all the kind of things that would have been terribly difficult maybe 2 generations ago. It's just there at your fingertips. Isn't the American dream now there for all of us?
Well, I think so to some extent. I mean, you live in the UK, and so your political environment is conducive to that. I think, some of your listeners who might live in different countries with different political environments would say, well, no, I have access issues. I'm able to access the internet through sort of certain gateways, and I can't see the entire thing. And so, I think it depends on the the circumstances that somebody might be living in the country that they are living in. And so there are those realities. If somebody doesn't have those restrictions and they have access to the web in its full form, the reality is somebody can get an Ivy League quality education for free if they're willing to put in the work. And if you're willing to put in the work, sure, absolutely. Then I think aspects of the American dream are available to millions of people, and that should put a smile on most people's faces.
Yeah, it should. It should. We've got opportunities that we've never had before. So let's start talking about your life. Before we start talking about lifting up the hood or the bonnet, as we say in the United Kingdom, of all the internet sites around there. Well, what made you go into the army? Because you're very entrepreneurial, you're very conversational, you're a communicator. What made this young lad go into an environment which in many ways gives you the foundations for a very good entrepreneurial life, because it gives you structure, it gives you organization, and I've seen that time and time again, but in many ways is restrictive as well. What caused that?
Yeah, I think you just mentioned kind of the pros and cons, and although the restriction, I think, was good for me at that point in my life. And I actually signed up for the Air Force when I was a junior in high school. So I was already committed to serve. When I was, I think 16 years old in the delayed enlistment program, I knew that that's what it was that I wanted to do. I wanted to serve because there's a bit of a family legacy with that. My grandfather on my father's side had served in World War II in the Army Air Corps here in the U.S. And then my uncle, my dad's brother, served in the Air Force during the Vietnam War. And so there's a sense of patriotism that runs very, very deep within me. So I felt like I needed to serve because it's what I wanted to do. And I felt some level of obligation to do that too. But also I knew that because I was a horrible student in high school, I graduated number 273 out of 300. And it isn't because I was in the top percentile, I was in the bottom percentile. So I just barely graduated. So being able to go into the service was also my pathway to college. And so through that, I got to learn something really new that I didn't know before. I ended up working in nuclear missile silos in the prairies of South Dakota in the United States, and did that for 4 years. And it was fantastic. Most days were like 100% pure adrenaline. I loved it. I loved every aspect of the troubleshooting, the problem solving, doing it under pressure, doing it under tight timelines, doing it while people were watching. I loved it. And the sense of danger, the exhilaration that came with it, I loved it. And through all of that, I learned, you know what? Wow, I'm a pretty good problem solver, and I'm a pretty good problem solver under pressure. And so I didn't realize that my DNA, my entrepreneurial DNA, was kind of being honed. I'm one of 10 grandkids. All of us became entrepreneurs. And that was really sort of my coming out party, if you will, of really kind of understanding sort of what my chops were. And it was fantastic. And I also needed the restriction, at that age, being 18 to 22, I needed that structure of what you can and can't do. So I really believe, and looking back on it all, that that's where I learned what my entrepreneurial DNA chops would be. And I've kind of been refining it over the last, 25 years. And it's been a whole lot of fun in the process.
So that's brilliant. So you was at that point in your life where you was coming out of the army, but you'd already got a dawning realization that you was a problem solver. So that's good. That is a super talent that can be developed. But of course, you then got to take that idea of what you can do very well and actually construct it into something that other people want. That is a big stumbling block that so many people have. So how did you do that? How did you leave there into civilian life with this idea of, hey, I'm a good problem solver, but let's make a business work?
Well, there's no such thing as an overnight success. And so we're talking about, a 23, 24 year journey, right? I'm 45 now. I got out of the service when I was 22. I was married at 21, and my wife and I will be celebrating our 25th wedding anniversary in May of 2018. And so this has been a long progression. When I got out of the service, actually, while I was in the service, I did an unpaid internship for an advertising agency in Rapid City, South Dakota. I did it for 3 months, worked my butt off for 3 months, and then they took me on as a part-time job. And then when I got out of the service, it became my full-time job. And I did that for about 1.5 years. And through that, I realized, gosh, I kind of like this marketing thing. I like solving problems. that I learned when I was in service. I kind of have a bit of a technical flair. I like schematics and drawings and hard stuff. And, there's kind of a home for me in the marketing world, being able to blend those talents. Then we moved to Wisconsin, and we've been here for 23 or 24 years. And then I applied those talents at agencies here. And I've also owned 5 companies. And along the way, I worked for the University of Wisconsin at the La Crosse campus for about 6 years. And I taught curriculum. And that's when I wrote my first, couple of books for business owners. And so through all of that distillation, or kind of gestation, I guess is the better word, I learned, I like to solve problems. I have a bit of a technical flair. I like the web, but at the core, I'm a business person. But through all of that, I like research, and I started uncovering things and, Google Analytics and piecing things together, like the name of your show, Join Up Dots. I like solving puzzles. And that's really all that this was for me, was starting to see data points and problems and all of that. It was kind of like putting a big puzzle piece together. And then being able to work with some exceptional mentors along the way who hugged and pushed me enough in this way that a business came out of it. But it was because I made a lot of mistakes along the way and worked with some really, really smart people that we have the business that we do today.
But those mistakes are the wins, aren't they? We say this almost every day in Join Up Dots. More often than not, people say to me, I'm so glad that I had those failures, because I don't think I would have ended up doing what that was pointing me towards. Everything sort of falls into a natural position as long as you keep on moving forward. Do you see it in the same way?
Yeah, and I think that that's the mature way to see it. Sometimes it's really hard to see it that way when you're in the throes of it, when you're in the problem. And I've had instances where I've lost $100,000 because of my first big colossal mistake. My second big colossal mistake, I lost $200,000, and that's real money, and it's tough to be able to go through that situation saying, well, it's all just good tuition. I mean, the reality is that freaking hurts when you're going through that, and you're feeling the pain. You can't pay stuff, and there are people knocking on your door saying, "Hey, but you owe me for this," and you don't have any money because you just lost it. That hurts. And so, the reality is that there does need to be a grieving period, and whether that's a few days or weeks or months, but we have to be able to acknowledge that we just went through something that was very traumatic, very painful. There's a grieving period that goes with that. But afterwards, you also need to be able to buck up and pull yourself up and say, well, you know what? Losing $200,000 on that deal really was terrible. And that was painful. And I need to learn from that. But I got to get back in the game, or where am I going to be? And the best of the best in this business are the ones who have made colossal mistakes, David, like you're talking about, but are also the ones who are able to have the mature mindset, like you just said, of, yeah, that was bad. And I learned this, this, and this, and I'm going to apply it now, and I'm going to be better as a result.
Well, let's play some words now that's going to take us to the next part of the conversation. Here's Jim Carrey.
My father could have been a great comedian, but he didn't believe that was possible for him. And so he made a conservative choice. Instead, he got a safe job as an accountant. And when I was 12 years old, he was let go from that safe job. And our family had to do whatever we could to survive. I learned many great lessons from my father, not the least of which was that you can fail at what you don't want. So you might as well take a chance on doing what you love.
Now, that always leads me to the question, which is basically, did you know that you were going to love this, or was it just a way of paying the bills? You obviously do now, and you love connecting with people and educating them and inspiring them and everything that you were saying. But at the beginning, was it just a job? Was it just something, I think I could pay a few bills with this?
That's a really good question, and no one has ever asked me that before, and which is why I think it's so great, and because it's thought provoking. I think a lot of us go into sort of our passion areas, if you will, by somebody saying, kind of recognizing maybe a talent in us and saying, "Hey, could you solve this problem for me?" And you're like, Sure. So predictive ROI started as a weekend project. My first SEO or my SEO book had just come out, and somebody hit me up, through LinkedIn or email or something and said, "Hey, could I pay you $300 to develop a keyword list?" And I'm like, "Oh, awesome." And I thought that was just fantastic. And so I did it and I made $300 and I'm like, "Man, that was kind of neat." And then, another project came in and another project came in. And so then it started kind of like, again, join up the dots, seeing the puzzle pieces. And I was doing work that I really, really loved. And it tied back to some of the things I'd done for 15 years. And it was just a lot of fun. And so then that really turned into something that I knew that we could build a business around. Initially, though, yeah, it was something that would pay the bills. It was, some quick money over a weekend. And then it was probably about a year or two of doing that was like, I think we might actually have something here, and then we've never looked back.
It is amazing when it comes together for you, because I know this journey. The journey where I am with the show, which is the sort of main money earner that I have, took about 3 years, but my actual journey leading up to the show was about 8 years, doing little things and dabbling on this and just kind of what I thought was playing around in a dissatisfied way, where I was in a corporate gig and I was thinking, there's got to be more to this. You do actually have to go on that journey. I don't think anybody would be able to just go from A to B almost, not overnight, but within about 6 weeks, 6 months or whatever. There's got to be a progression, hasn't there?
Yeah, I think, Malcolm Gladwell had it right. A lot of people have talked about this, of course, the 10,000 hours that it takes to become an expert. I think that's legit. I think, are there some, lightning in a bottle, overnight successes? Sure. And people sometimes like to point to the Facebooks, the Microsofts, and, the DOS story of Bill Gates writing that. Okay, Bill Gates is a genius and also a great salesperson, selling DOS before he'd ever written it. It's a fantastic story. Steve Jobs and Wozniak and how they brought Apple. But, a lot of people like to kind of glean over the fact that there were so many nights of grit and tenacity in some dude's garage in Southern or Northern California in order to make that happen. Or Facebook, Facebook with 1 billion people, it's like, oh, it's an overnight success. No, it isn't. If you really go deep into that story, it's packed full of, bad relationships and litigation and people not liking each other and, the Harvard campus not really liking the first versions of, because it was basically a dating site and it wasn't really very kind to some of the people, profiles that were posted there. So, are there really true things of an overnight success? No, I don't think that they are. Instead, there are paths like it took 8 years for you to do what you did, and then 3 more years of gritting it out with a live show to where it's like, oh, look at David now. Well, let's not forget the 11 years plus those years before the 11 years of all of that context that made you into the man you are today, because that is what's really valuable.
Oh, well said. Well said. I'm going to give you an applause on that. That was. There we go. A bit of an applause. That was powerful stuff. I need to have you as my wake up alarm every morning. Just your voice, sir, telling me these things.
You are very kind, but it is easy to lose sight of all the amazing, awesome, wonderful things and all of the bad things that brought you to where you are today. And, one of my dear friends, her name is Misty Lown, and I've interviewed her a couple of times on Onward Nation. And she just recently, in the encore that we did just a few weeks ago, she said to me, growing up, I didn't have a lot. In fact, I had a lot of bad stuff. I didn't have a lot of opportunity. I had a lot of challenges. I had a lot of obstacles. And when I was a young teen, I made some really bad choices as a young adult. And I had hardship and I had struggle and I had, a lot of grief, and people, because of the side of town that I grew up in, didn't think that I would amount to much, which is just a horrible label to assign to a young kid. But people did. They didn't think that she would be much. And now she's a beacon in her industry, and people look at her in the community and say, oh my gosh, that's Misty Lown. With a sound of pride in their voice, and they should, because she is just a beacon of hope, a fantastic mentor, powered by the devoted life to Christ that she lives. and how she's impacting kids every single week in what she's doing. But she said to me, I wouldn't change a single thing in my story because all of that gave me resilience. And resilience is a muscle, Stephen. And so I'm grateful for my path and struggle because it made me who I am today. And that's not hyperbole. That's the truth.
Now, well, when you look at it in your own life, then, has your persistence, has your hustle muscle grown then over a period of time? Are you a much stronger man than you would have been sort of 8 years ago?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, without a doubt. I mean, think about it. It's like when you go into the gym and you want to, like, you have a goal that you want to get to a 300-pound bench press. Well, you don't go in there on the first day and say, all right, load up 345s on each side and I'm going to pound this out and we're going to do 315 and I'm going to do it for reps. I mean, only a fool does that, right? And so to approach your business in a similar way that, I haven't had the struggle. I don't have the battle scars. I've not been in the trenches. I've not done the hand-to-hand combat that it takes to be great at biz dev. To think that you're just going to instantly be successful or that without the trials by fire, all of that is fantastic context to really have great smarts. Otherwise, you're just going to be a tumbleweed. People are not going to take you seriously, right? You just don't jump in and think that you're going to run a 6 or 7 or 8 figure business without the years and years of discipline and learning and application and failure that it takes in order to reach that. Now, are there, prodigies? Are there, people who are, 15 years old and are crushing it? Yes, because they are super smart in learning from other people's mistakes, and they're able to make those connections and be able to run at a pace and tempo. Are there people who are, super gifted? I don't deny that. Absolutely. But that is not the norm, and that won't be for the rest of us.
So if we're taking this as a kind of personal standpoint, that it takes time to develop, it takes time to find your personal strength, I would say as well, the exact applies to website and website creation, which is your sort of super talent, delving into it and seeing what works. Are we fools to ourselves where we think we can throw up a website and it's going to be perfect? Is it something that has to develop persistence itself?
Absolutely. And your website will never be done. Your sales funnel will never be perfect. Your email campaigns will never be right. Your Facebook ads will need to be dialed in continuously. The market moves, needs move. So to think that you're going to either put up a website today and you're going to be making X amount of dollars tomorrow is foolish. Will you make some? Maybe. Will you make more 30 days from now if you're consistently testing and changing and so forth? Yeah, if you're smart, that's what you're going to do. So to think that the internet today, with the amass and flood of competitors who are really smart and some of them are very well funded, to think you're just going to walk into that space with, throwing out a website that you built one night and tomorrow is going to be infinitely successful is foolish. To think that you're going to be able to learn, that you're going to make mistakes, learn from those mistakes, and 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, 4 years down the road, that you're really going to have a successful business, is that possible? Absolutely, if you're willing to put in the work and learn along the way.
So with your website, I was looking at your website, you've got 8 money-draining website mistakes and also 8 money-making things. For somebody new building a business, what is the best one to focus on? The draining website mistakes or the money-making? Because I would have said the draining ones would be an easier fix.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, using your framework there, if somebody's just getting started, then absolutely paying attention to the money draining mistakes, because if you're building something new or relatively new, you want to make sure that you don't make mistakes out of the gate, and these are things that would literally cost you money. And the first money draining mistake is really not knowing what your baseline is. I mean, if you're brand new, you're not going to have a baseline, and then not setting SMART, which stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time sensitive goals. And I know that, David, and maybe some of your listeners are like, oh, well, that's really profound that I need to set goals. You need to set very specific goals that are based on data and set realistic expectations as it relates to finances, time, resources. Otherwise, you will aimlessly wander through the wilderness. I constantly or consistently sit down with business owners, executives of small companies, large companies, and they can't define what it is that they're reasonably trying to accomplish within a reasonable time frame. They don't know. Well, I'm just going to throw this out there. We're going to run Facebook ads, or we're going to do a LinkedIn campaign, or we're going to do this, that, the other thing, and see what it is that we get. And that's where big mistakes happen. And that's why companies are leaking money out of their digital ecosphere, because they don't actually, very rarely does a company know what it is that they're trying to accomplish.
Because I was watching a video, I get lots of guests that come through to me, and I go over onto their website, I do my due diligence, and more often than not there's a video attached, and more often than not I click on it and it bores me, and so I turn it off. But I was watching one with yourself, and I think it was Dan Hardy, it was about 3 weeks ago that I sort of watched it, and this gentleman was interviewing you about mistakes, and as I was half watching it, I suddenly become fully watching it, because the bit that really got me was the fact that people overcomplicate their websites. And I've got a business which I'm actually restructuring the homepage now based on your advice. And what I loved about it was you tell us, it's the lack of distinction. People have only got a very short moment of time of looking at your website and knowing what it's about and whether they want to be part of it. So give us a bit of background information on that, please, Stephen.
Yeah, and so the lack of distinction is a topic that I learned quite a bit about from my good friend and best-selling author, Hall of Fame speaker, Scott McCain, here in the U.S. And Scott, in these lessons of distinction is, we have a very short period of time to obviously capture somebody's attention. And so we like to work clients through what we call the XYZ exercise, which means this: you need to be able to answer 3 very simple questions on behalf of your customer or website visitor, whatever context you want to think of it in. And here's the 3 simple questions. We do X, and X being the product or service that you're delivering. So we do X. We make widgets, or we provide accounting services, whatever the service might be. We do X. For Y, the customer profile. For companies that are doing $1 million to $20 million a year in revenue, or for whoever, whatever the customer profile is. So we do X for Y. And then the last question is, so they can Z, and Z being the result outcome. So Z is, so they can generate 200 to 500% return on investment on their digital spend, or so they can, increase retention rates, or, whatever the Z would be for your customer. So we do X for Y, so they can Z. And if you get really clear on the answer of those questions, and that is truly the value proposition for your client and or prospect, then you will create distinction, and you put that on your website. Your bounce rate goes down, lead gen goes up. Lots of wonderful things happen when you can really identify with who it is you're trying to serve.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. But of course, for English-speaking languages, I have to explain it's actually XYZ. That's how you say it, sir. It's not XYZ. Who's ever taught you that? I don't know. But
fair enough.
But there is an example that you put, which is brilliant. So this is like an example of what we're talking about. On your front page, your home page, this is a simple example for a bakery. We bake quality gluten-free treats for cookie lovers in University Park so they can enjoy sweets without getting sick. Very short, but instantly you look at it and you think, oh, that's me. That's me. I don't want to get sick, but I would need to eat that. Bang, I'm into that. And that's a big failure, isn't it? And I realized that I actually have a podcasting mastery course, which goes very, very well. But I realized that I was missing a trick because it's almost too complicated at the beginning. There's too much information on it. So I'm in the process of stripping it down because of that.
Excellent. Well, fantastic. And you're exactly correct. Stripping it down. That's what's important. Doesn't mean dumbing it down. That's a big distinction, right? So your customers and prospects, it's not that they're not bright enough to get something that's complicated. That's not it. It's just being able to really speak to the pain point, as you just mentioned in this example. And so making it stripped down, making it super simple and easy and quick to understand, that's the key in how fast you can solve the problem.
Now, what I always teach people is that, first of all, and you've got it on your site as well, you got to know your customer. You've got to at least understand what you're fishing for so that you can use the right bait. If you just blast it out to everyone, no one's going to pay any attention. But if you just poke your little fishing rod with the right bait in the right fishing hole, you're going to catch something. And so many people don't bother doing that, do they? They don't bother going over to Facebook and finding these groups, these forums, and then asking questions based on what they're about to issue. It's a big... I don't understand why they don't do it, because it seems obvious to me.
Because it's work, right? It's work. It's hard work. I think that there is so much... Well, in your course is not like this, but I wonder if you would agree with this. It drives me bananas that, every person who's been doing something for like 3 or 4 weeks decides to come out with some, cornerstone course.
Yeah.
Teaching you how to do this, that, or the other thing.
Yeah.
And there's no good content. It's wrapped full of marketing hyperbole, and largely it's crap. It's like, for Pete's sake. And so I think that it's easy to get wrapped up in that gold rush marketing hyperbole thinking, oh, well, this is just going to be easy. No, so David's got a course and he's got 11 years of experience at least with respect to what gives him the credibility to produce great content. And he does produce great content because he's got 11 years of context in that area, plus everything before that, as a business person, professional, and so forth, that is blended into that. That makes it legit. He's not some overnight person who decided to wake up one day and say, oh, I think I'll create a course. But there's so much of that out there, David, and my guess is that drives you nuts too.
Oh, it's more than bananas. It's the whole fruit basket that I would go with. It does. It drives me mental. 3 things drive me mental. Number one, everybody says that they're an entrepreneur like it's some kind of super talent. And I just say an entrepreneur is somebody that's willing to make mistakes and keep going. There's not a super talent attached to being an entrepreneur, and anybody who says that drives me mad, although I probably have said it on my website as well. Secondly, I hate the fact that everybody puts expert after it, and they've literally just walked out of a job and then they're an expert in something or other. And that last one, that last one is, it's a course. Get my 3-part course and then you will do X, Y, Z and stuff. And I never pay for anything unless I can see that website has been around for 5 years. And if that website's been around for 5 years, and there's a great thing called Wayback Machine, where you can actually look at snapshots and see how long it's been around for, then I don't go near it. And also what I do as well, I'm telling you, under the hood or under the bonnet, here we go, I always go into LinkedIn as well. And I look up the person who is doing these things. And if they've just been working in a bakery 2 minutes beforehand and now they're telling me about SEO, I don't go anywhere near it.
Okay. So you just gave your listeners the great sort of litmus test to be able to evaluate all course providers by that. If that person, he or she, does not have the depth and won't pass the litmus test that David just gave you, then go invest in somebody who can, because otherwise it is a waste of money and you're buying hyperbole.
Absolutely. I think we're on the same sheet here, sir. I think we should go into business and just create a new business all around It's a Small World. I think that's the way to do it. And I don't know how it's going to lead in. I don't know about the copyright, but it's still in my head. I can't get free from it. So the very last one I want to look at just before I actually push away from this and we bring on Steve Jobs, who's waiting in the wings, is the ambiguous calls to action. What does it actually mean on a website? Because I think that is a real biggie.
Well, it is because we unintentionally think that, we look through the calls to action where we're asking somebody to do something, or we think we are, and unfortunately we're just not 100% clear. And so what I mean by that is to remove the ambiguity. You literally need, when David is looking at your website, you literally need to say, David, enter your email address here, click is your next step, the download button here, and then you will get this. And I know that that is simple, but if you go back into your website, I can almost assure you, your listeners, that it isn't that clear. And it literally needs to be step 1, step 2, step 3, with super granularity, very specific, no ambiguity, that you could walk a kindergartner up to that call to action or that landing page, and that kindergartner could say, oh, I need to enter my email address here, and then when I do, I get that. That's how specific it needs to be. And, one of the other money draining mistakes is there's just too much stuff. Most of us think like giving somebody the abundance of choice is what they want, and it isn't. Instead of having 7 or 15 different offers or options, have 3 and remove the ambiguity behind those 3. So it is very simple. Tell David, step 1, step 2, step 3. That's how you do it, and remove any shred of ambiguity.
Yeah, and if you are struggling to make your website clear, listeners, just send it over to my wife, because if she doesn't get it in about 1.2 seconds, she's off. She's off. It's got to be totally clear for my wife. Yep. There we go. It's a business. It's a business for us, Stephen.
Indeed, my friend.
So let's bring him on the show. This is the part of the show that we've been kind of building up to that leads to your personal journey back in time. But these words were said back in 2005 by the late Steve Jobs. Always worth listening to again. Here's Steve.
Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference.
They are such powerful words, aren't they?
They are, and I think that was the Stanford graduation address that he delivered.
That's right.
But yes, they are powerful and very accurate.
So in your own life, obviously we've been looking back already, and we started off with the army job, and then the big mistakes you made and you led through. Is it simple enough to say, yes, I can join up my dots?
Absolutely. And so I think that Steve was 100% correct that it's difficult to see how the trial and tribulation that you may be, in today, how that fits as a fantastic dot or puzzle piece into, really what is that puzzle or what is that tapestry of your life? It's impossible to see that. But if we have a grateful spirit, despite the pain and suffering, and we realize, okay, this situation today is really, really hard. And if I'm grateful for having it, even though I don't know why I'm having it and what all this means right now, but if I can trust in my spirit and that God is putting me through something right now that I might not understand, but that I'm going to understand, in Steve's words, 10 years from now, then that gives us the ability to be grateful for the experience, even though it's hard, and because it's really going to be valuable at some point in the future. So I think he's spot on with what he said.
So when was your big dot moment then, Stephen, when you put your hands behind your head and thought, this is it, I've got it, I know where I'm heading, this is what I want to do?
I think I have a series of those, kind of often, really. And, I'm talking about my grandfather, a few minutes ago. And I've studied his life, and he passed away when I was a freshman in high school. So I had a lot of context with him. And, it wasn't really until probably about a year or so ago that I had one of those moments, putting my hands behind my head and saying, oh my gosh, that's why Pop did what he did. That's why, because it like intersected, his story intersected with pieces of my experience. And then I had such a greater appreciation for what it is that he did and the sacrifices that he made. Or, when, we're working through growing the business right now and we're adding full-time employees as quickly as we can. And we're growing the business right now. And so with that, we've got new businesses coming in, through our biz dev pipeline, and we've got new talent that's coming in through our, pipeline for talent. And that creates cash flow constraints and moving things around and scheduling, payments and working things out in a creative way with, vendors and partners and even customers. Then I think, geez, 3 years ago when we were having really serious cash flow constraints in the business, and I was constantly doing what I was calling the shell game, that was really painful then. And now I can do that in a much greater degree. So I had one of those moments that you just described where I'm like, oh, back then when the numbers weren't as big and the challenges weren't as great, even though they felt like they were, that's given me the chops that I need today to manage bigger numbers and manage more people and more complexity and more deadlines. So I think that in my opinion, there's not one defining moment where you get total clarity, at least not for me. It's come in bits and pieces where I can look back and say, that's how all of that made sense today. And you know what? 10 years from now, I'm going to look back to today and say, okay, now that's given me the gut, the strength and the ability to do what I'm doing now. So I think that that's always evolving, in my opinion.
And so in the next 2 or 3 years, there's still going to be times when we can come into a room and find you rocking in your dressing gown, unshaved, thinking, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do.
I think so, absolutely, because that, also in my opinion, that's the sign of growth. That's the sign of challenges, that this will never be easy. If we're truly committed to building a great business, there is always something to learn. There are always new challenges on the horizon. Because if you didn't have that, then you'd be static, that you would be, stale, that you would be growing old, and that you would soon to be disrupted. One of our values here at Predictive ROI is life is not static. There is always something to learn. There is always some sort of, way to change the business. That's a lesson I learned from Kevin Harrington, one of the sharks in, the ABC Emmy award-winning show Shark Tank here in the U.S. And he said to me, he's like, when I was in college, Stephen, I had 25 employees and I was running a $6 million HVAC business, contracting company. And then, he told me the story about how he invented the infomercial. He already had a $6 million business. He didn't need a new business, but he saw, because life is not static, and those are the eyes in which he looks at the world, that even though he was rocking it, he saw this opportunity and he turned it into $5 billion in worldwide sales. So life is not static. If you want to be great, then you have to realize that you're constantly pushing and changing and learning something new, or else you just kind of fall asleep at the wheel.
Great stuff. Great stuff. And it's led us perfectly to the end of the show, where we're going to send you on another journey back to speak to your younger self. And if you could go back in time and speak to the younger Stephen, what age would you choose and what advice would you like to give him? Well, we're going to find out, because I'm going to play the music, and when it fades, you're up. This is the Sermon on the Mic.
Here we go with the best bit of the show. The Sermon on the Mic. The Sermon on the Mic.
Hey, Stephen. I know you're 19 years old right now, and you just had one of the most traumatic experiences of your life. You got called on a Sunday afternoon, and you're just hanging out with Christine and her family, and you were asked to, buckle up and grab your gear and dispatch in an emergency situation out to a missile silo that we thought was going to be on fire. And so you had to run into a situation, you and your teammate, Steve, along with your security escort. And it was a true life and death situation. You thought that there was fire inside a missile silo where there was a nuclear missile and a bomb, and you diffuse the situation because of great teamwork, good decision making. And through all of that, you're searching for the meaning. Well, I'm here to tell you, 26 years later, the meaning of that day was that you really learned legitimately under fire what it means to troubleshoot and solve a problem, and the power of teamwork and great communication and taking decisive action in a hurry. And that experience on that summer day is going to fuel you for the rest of your life and be able to drive home why communication and teamwork and respect and responsibility and taking action quickly, how that can help you build businesses, build teams, build relationships. And it'll be the fiber of, when you have a really bad day going forward for the rest of your life, you can sit there and think, was this situation worse or more dangerous than running into a missile silo I thought was on fire? Nope. Okay, I got this. That's what I would say to my younger self at 19.
Brilliant stuff. Brilliant stuff. Stephen, what is the number one best way that our audience can connect with you?
You can find me at onwardnation.com. My direct email address, if anybody's interested, is Stephen, Stephen, at onwardnation.com. I read and reply to every single one, so feel free to drop me a note.
We'll have all the links on the show notes to make it as easy as possible for people to connect. Stephen, thank you so much for spending time with us today, joining up those dots. And please come back again when you have more dots to join up, because I do believe that by joining up the dots and connecting our pasts is the best way to build our futures. Stephen, thank you so much.
David, thank you sincerely for the wonderful invitation to be here with you on your show. It was a great experience. I hope I delivered some value, but it was a whole heck of a lot of fun spending time with you, and I'm grateful for the invitation. Thank you, sir.
That was Stephen Woosner. I hope I said his name right. I should have asked what his name was. If I have spelled or said your name wrong, Stephen, I do apologise. But what a lovely guest. What a truly lovely guest. And somebody that found something. He was a problem solver, but then he went on that journey to try and find where that problem solving would fit in. And he's found that. He's found that the fact that people are wasting so much money and opportunities on websites, and he can look at it and diagnose what's wrong. I do recommend, if you have got a business or you're thinking of starting a business, go over to predictiveroi.com and look for the money draining mistakes online, because they make a lot of sense. And when you read them, you think, oh God, slap. It's like Homer Simpson, duh. You just think, what am I doing? So I'm going to be revamping a lot of my stuff based on that information, because it's gold. Thank you so much for listening once again to Join Up Dots. I'm going to be coming soon with a few more solo shows. I've got things I need to talk about that doesn't fit into the interview sections. And until then, we will see you again. Cheers. See ya.
David doesn't want you to become a faded version of the brilliant self you were once to become. So he's put together an amazing guide for you called the 8 Pieces of Advice That Every Successful Entrepreneur Practices, including the 2 that changed his life. Head over to joinupdots.com to download this amazing guide for free, and we'll see you tomorrow on Join Up Dots.